I'll hit the growl. Oh, here we go. One more time. Now that is one of those reverberating kind of echoes of strength if I ever heard it. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Good evening, and welcome in to Bigfoot Real Stories and Real Encounters, UFOs as well. It's Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. And again, big welcome to you all and greetings to everyone from the East Coast to the West Coast. And sometimes we dabble into the dimensions. I am your host, Michael Anthony, with David Parker this evening with me, the man who lives amongst them. A big shout out also to Bill Rigby at the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project. We are America Disclosing Uncensored, and everyone at us, with us, in this life together with Bigfoot. Thank you for joining us and sharing us out to all your friends and your favorite groups. And many thanks to all the groups who support me, even when we double share to you. We truly, you have our sincerest apologies. Sometimes it happens. Anyway, David, good evening. How are you tonight?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, me too. A little tired and weary, but that's life and as it comes and goes. Yeah, March 9th. I mean, time's flying. You just had 4 inches of snow?
Yeah, and we're going to probably get hit again before the weekend. But fortunately, by Sunday, it should be 50s. Hopefully, it'll melt some of the stuff off because I'm basically a prisoner in my house when the weather conditions are like this.
Right, I get that. Me too, because I woke up, I don't know, around 5:30, 5:45 this morning. And, I turn on the news for a little bit. I mean, there's a few things I look at. I dabble in the world of everything and politics and more. I mean, I try to keep up to beat with things. And what I was looking at was the weather because, I'm doing a project. To be the long and short end of it is, we're going to get like this rain. There may be a few flurries or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I'm doing some researching. I'm going through the internet. I'm hitting YouTube, duck, and blah, blah. And, some old mail that people got. And I'm responding to them, trying to get back to them, thanking them for watching, the different platforms and stuff. I look out the window and it's like this, Dave.
Oh, really?
Like 3 inches of snow. And I'm like, what's this? I mean, I I wasn't paying attention to the window.
Where'd that come from?
Exactly. And I'm just thinking in my mind, oh, really? I mean, again, the weather people, they are the greatest. So that happened. No big deal. I collected my thoughts with disappointment just because, we've had some 60-degree days and spring's on its way. We all want to get out. We want to research. We want to have campfires. Start living life a little bit more, collect all these days that are left where we have a safe environment to live life. But anyway, collectively. And so, yeah, it didn't really bother me, but it does bother me because, as you just said, I don't know if remember it was in the green room or just now, brain fog. We're supposed to have another event, I think, Saturday as well. But most of today, what happened, and we didn't really warm up, but there was a pretty good melt off. How were you that way? Did you get a melt off from the 4 inches? Or
some?
Yeah.
I think today the high was like 34. So, some, at least it crusted up so it doesn't blow around.
Right. Understood.
I know when I was living back in South Dakota, that was a big issue there where, you get a bunch of snow, you get dug out, and it's fluffy, and then the wind blows and drifts everything back in.
Yeah.
It's not so bad here. It's hilly, and, you got the trees to give you a little bit of a windbreak. But I am definitely ready for spring. I want to have more interaction. Last Thursday, we had a little bit of a sighting out beyond the barn. There was a dark spot, and I was standing out on the deck, and I said to my boy, I said, "Come here." I wasn't wearing my glasses, but I saw black where there normally isn't black.
Right.
And I said, "What do you see?" I said, "See that fat tree by the outhouse?" I said, "Now look beyond the barn at the fattest tree there, just on the left side. There's something dark." And he said, "Well, I kind of see it going up and down a little bit." And the following day, I went out and took a look, and there wasn't a black spot there. So I would say it was a living creature. And there's only a couple things in the woods here that are black. That's wild turkeys, which I don't think it was one of them, and Bigfoot, because we don't have any black bears here. They tried introducing them once upon a time, but I think the locals, took care of it.
Right, right. So that was the action for the man that lives amongst them this week?
Yeah, well, it's nice to have a sighting. I mean, normally, we usually get a visual like maybe once every 2 months.
Right.
But, ever since I got married and stuff, there's been a few more.
Right. I hear you. And again, it's better for us to be as honest as we can and have clarity in our transparency. And that's what will give us a place, a cut above the rest in many scenarios. We really do try to do our homework and, talk about the real things. That's what's important. I got something real, but first let me do this. Jeffrey, I think you already left. All right. I tried to send you hello. Eric Leon Barton. Hello, my brother from a different mother. How are you, man? Drinks on you tonight? Send me one over. Carl's on, Beth's on. Nancy stepped in. We got a few people jumping into the watch. So we're going to be talking Bigfoot, UFOs, a couple other narratives of things. One of the things that I thought I wanted to shout this out. It was something that came back to mind. I don't have a lot of notes on this, but I remember the story. So I tried to find it and look it up. And the way I did find it and heard it this morning, because that's what I was doing. Hey, Charlie Walsh, what's going on, my brother? He's going to be sharing Studio 10 o'clock talks with me, coming in on the live segments every once in a while. So, Charlie, welcome, man. We appreciate you. We're not political tonight, but we do have a political agenda. We will be whispering as often as we can. 2008, though. There was reportings in Pennsylvania. I'm bringing this up because I know Bill Rigby likes Pennsylvania, and he's fascinated with all the different types of encounters and more that go on up here, because we have everything from UFOs, Bigfoot sightings and more. I mean, there's an abundance. This doesn't have to do with that. This is more of a ghostly element of an issue that happened in Pennsylvania, and it's called the ghost tree of Alves. Now, there was a guy in Pennsylvania here who kept seeing what he thought were like little elf people in his tree. And he would go out by this tree and try to get pictures of them. As he started to do this, at night when he was sleeping, he would have encounters of the strange, okay? Like things would get knocked off counters, just mysterious things that should have never happened. So he gets involved with a paranormal group. They were police, by the way, okay? So this is documented case in Pennsylvania here through a paranormal service that services Pennsylvania. They come out and they verify a lot of what he's saying, going through with the rituals that a paranormal group would do, EMF detectors, all these things, trying to take pictures. And they tell him, yeah, you have an issue. And if you want, we'll study it more. We'll try to help you with it. What do you want us to do? He says, I basically wanted them to get to the bottom of it. So, they told him the best thing to do is there's something about the tree, the theory of the wood spirits, the folklores, best to probably just stay away. Let's not assume anything here because you are having activities, and they caught the activities. They couldn't verify exactly what they were by camera yet, but they knew it was active. So they told him, stay away from the tree. Well, he didn't stay away from the tree. He went out and he thought, well, okay, I'll, investigate a little bit more while they're not there. Well, he ramped it up. He caused a big jitter, in his own household. And as he went out, the more often he went to visit near this tree, the more the activities worsened. So he calls the paranormal group back up. And again, these are professional people who are just doing this as a hobby, that have a belief, no different from us. We believe in Bigfoot. We believe in UFOs and the similarities. When you're a believer, you're a believer. So he calls them back and they said, well, didn't we tell you not to quit bothering the tree? Don't go by the tree and maybe everything would be restful. So the guys stayed away from the tree for a couple days. They were there for a day. They did some more analyzing. They were trying to, dig in deeper on the paranormal to find out and make documentations. And I love people who actually keep a solid record of documentation of what happens from the time they step foot on property to the sighting and all the relationships to the information. Well, all right. So he thinks he's going to outthink these elves. He calls two friends over and says, look, they told me if I go near the tree, this will probably continue to happen. If I don't, it won't. And I guess he had some words with his friends and said, why don't you guys come over? When I go to bed, have a couple beers, be quiet, just absorb what's going on out there. So for a couple days, the house gets quiet because he doesn't go out. But then he makes this plan because the paranormal group said, don't you go out there. Well, he figures that if anything happens, these elves, dwarfs, and there's folklore to what this all means in a lot of ways. If we would break it down, but I'm not going to get into all that. So anyway, his friends start to do it. Ramps up worse than it ever could. They still went back on the attack to the house because he had somebody else come to do it. So in that, there's a message of knowledge here. Careful what you wish for. He wound up having to move from the property, taking a loss on the property. And that's pretty much the end of the story. But I thought to myself, well, it's short enough to share. People would probably find it a little bit interesting because the Celtics and many cultures talk about the little people, the dwarfs, the elves, and who they are. Now, we know that some elves were actually very tall. If you really look into books and you do the deep dive, you're going to find out that they came in all sizes. Were they mythical? Were they magical? I don't know. But all I can tell you is they had created enough of a scenario of information on this particular property in Pennsylvania where they did confirm what they thought from photos, that they were little beings, elf beings. And the more the guy taunted them, even though he tried to change his narrative, like he didn't do it, they were right back in his house. Now, they didn't get into a deep dive of damages of the house, nothing like that. It was just the normality things that you would expect in a haunting, like bangings, things getting knocked over. It wasn't like knives being thrown across rooms, nothing
just
like
minor
that.
Little things,
but enough to keep it exerted and to keep it moving forward.
Did you happen to see that footage where there's an old guy and he's out in the woods and there's like a cliff behind him, and then way up kind of behind him on the cliff there is this small being that's probably, I don't know, between a foot and a half tall, and it's only a few seconds where they show it, but it walks and stuff. I wonder if that was maybe one of them, because it was pretty skinny, but it was like the size of a child's doll.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, and they're mentioned in paranormal events and happenings. That these little people, little beings, little entities, angelics, now that they may be of a different dimension of some sort, crossing over. I don't know. Maybe it does have a similarity. I don't know if it's actually the same from the same story. I couldn't verify that. From the signs of the land and the description, I never heard of a cliff being mentioned. So I would just say that to you. It could be something of a different case, a different matter. And all we can do is like they do.
If I
Like,
run across it again, I'll send it to you because it's kind of interesting. And it was this older guy, kind of looked like Santa Claus, and he's out there in the woods, and higher up, there's kind of this cliff, and
right.
he's out in the woods, and there's this small figure. And they've done some analysis, and they couldn't debunk it, so
right.
they're not exactly sure what the heck it is, but it's a little people of some sort.
Well, it's, I mean, these are things that repeatedly come up over and over in time. So Beth McCord's asking, did they move with him? There was no further information to the story on that. Nancy Vincent says spirit elves are tall. Not necessarily. I'm not disagreeing with you. I've learned that they come in all sizes, that there are different cultures of these little beings. I'm just telling you what I've learned. Maybe my information's wrong. Maybe yours is absolutely right. Middle Earth. Okay. It's a good analogy. Maybe you're right. Absolutely amazing. And exactly. Okay. So she's following the narrative of what we're talking about, but just to give Nancy a shot out there. And you know what? I mean, I look for the best that I can find, things that are a little bit interesting. And I mean, there's a lot of folklore with the Celtics that said that there was once upon a time, these mythical beings were actually interacting with the humans. So there comes into a little bit biblical of a fact there. Because they were doing tradings of babies and different things. It was just like bizarre to hear some of this stuff when you really listen to it. It's that cognitive dissonance. It's just too big to it's so big you can't believe it, even if it's 100% factual truth. So they'll go to the other side and say, nah, it doesn't matter. But
the legend of the changeling babies.
In a way, yeah.
Where they'd take this baby in and it'd grow up to be some kind of a monster or something.
Yeah, like
it was a normal little baby that somebody put on the doorstep, and they take it in, love it, and raise it, and as it grows, it becomes monstrous in some way, shape, or form.
Well, there's been some stories. You won't hear about it in America, of course, but there's been some stories out there that do reflect that exactly. But again, what does it mean? Is it all true? Is it hypothetical? I don't know. But there's a large portion of narrative out there that says there's a sense of believability to it, because why would so many, for so many years, repeat the same types of stories and same types of encounters?
Yeah, different types of fairy folk.
Right. Yeah.
And like in Ireland, hi, the little people. And, and the leprechauns and stuff.
Right.
I wonder how many different, just like wherever you go, they call Bigfoot something different. It makes you wonder with these little people, how many different names are associated with them.
I'm being asked a question from Carl, and it's a good question. It really, really is. There's books about it. There's many movies, and they have a lot of interest. But was Merlin and King Arthur real? What are your thoughts, Dave?
Yes. They found some evidence at an ancient castle about Arthur Pendragon.
Does that help you, Carl?
Now, there's different things about Merlin where some people think that he was a giant,
right,
and had some mystical abilities. And then you hear about, the legend of the Green Man, who was some type of a forest dweller, a big giant hairy man. And there have been people that have claimed to have seen like a Bigfoot type creature within England. So I don't know. I wasn't there, but I think if there are some there, they're pretty few and far between, as heavily settled as the land is.
Right. And then if you go into some of the old world culture, Count Dracula. Well, yeah, they found out the Count was real. We made a narrative of creation out of who he was in ways, but he had a castle. I'm trying to remember where the hell his castle was. It's in my head.
Romania,
yes, yeah,
or Transylvania.
Yeah, something like that. Well, isn't Transylvania and Romania right like next door to each other?
Yeah, and I think depends. I think the borders have changed over the years, and they can sometimes overlap.
Right. And we do know that there's been a couple paranormal shows that went down there and to the castle, and they hung out for a while. And there's some really, really weird places in the woods down there. Some very, very unexplained things that I witnessed myself in real time. I'm not being there, but what was being shown. And I got to put it to you this way, everyone. I have to look at things as that's being shared. And I know some shows are, it's that propaganda thing. But when you get a crew out there that's creating a following for years to come and doing this, they've done a pretty fair job. I mean, I got to take my hat off to Zach and those guys. I mean, really, even if they scream like little sissy girls and run from every ghost encounter that they come across. The point is this: there are things out there, and we do know it, and we see it ourselves in real life, and we hear stories that get passed down in our own lives from family member to family member to talk about things. I had an aunt, not to go off base here much, when my great grandmother died. I guess it would be my great grandmother. Anyway, I knew. All right, they're old and gone. But my aunt, told me a story once when her mother died. That she was crying and she was laying in bed, and it went on for a long time, and she looked up. Something caught her eye, something got her attention, and she looked up and she seen what she said. Now, it could have been that she was just so caught up and the whole thing of losing her mother. But she said, and she swore to me, and I asked her repeatedly about it. I really did, because, here's me, conspiracy theorist, doing all this weird stuff that I do. And she swears to me up and down that her mother came to her and says, I'm fine, I'm better, and you don't need to cry no more. Aww. And she said in that short moment of what she understood, and I didn't ask her. I wish I could have asked her. Did you hear it in your mind, or did you actually hear it with your ear? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have liked to ask that one particular question. That, these are just like stories, and we've talked about them on Sunday nights when we do the Everything Unknown. But we're caught up in mystery because life is a mystery. It's a very, very big mystery, and we're surrounded with different things that place us there as well. So let me see if anybody else came in here. I know we got a few people that stopped in. Hello, everybody. Again, if you're just joining in again, this is Studio 10 o'clock Talks, and this is the Dark Radio Network Project. Let's get into a little Bigfoot.
Before we do that, I wanted to mention something.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
You know that video that you shared with that dark shadow that didn't really have a lot of form, that went up by somebody's door and then turned around and left?
On an open patio. Yeah, I didn't know what to think of it. I wanted to see what some people thought about it, because I didn't know what to think about it.
Now, my friend Sandy said she sees something like that at her place, inside the house and outside the house.
Okay.
And doesn't know what it is, but she'll catch it out of the corner of her eye every so often.
Well, I'm going to give you a mind blower. I have that ability. The peripheral vision sighting effect. And I've always had that. I don't know why. And there's many times that I look up because I know something changed in the element of my sight.
Uh-huh.
That's part of what your peripheral vision does for you. It alerts you to the fact it's actually an alert system to your own eye and mind to let you
Right.
know that what you cannot see in front of you is close by. That's why you can see more through your third eye when you're asleep, because you can go to that place. It's more of a spiritual place of your mind where your mind's more free. Here it's kind of on lockdown because you're dealing with what the hell was that? This is called reality. But anyway, if you look over my shoulder into the dark room back there, my kids years ago used to tell me that there was always a man standing in the corner. And this didn't come from here. The funny part about how it started, it didn't come from them all at one time. It came up from them having different experiences where two of them had no clue that the other ones told this to me and the old lady at the time. But here's something more weird about it. We're down in South Carolina at the beach, and my son meets this beautiful young lady. He does. And we're there. We enjoy our trip. We come home. A couple weeks later, there's a knock at the door. And guess who it is? It's this girl. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what the hell are you doing here, young lady? She's like, I come to see Mike. I said, well, that's fine. Happy to have you. I gave her a hug, let her in. Then I find out the young lady's staying for a couple days. And I'm like, well, wait a minute now. Okay, I'm still a father. I'm trying to raise my son right. What the freak is going on? All right. So anyway, first night here. So I say to my son, look, I don't want to get in your business. I want to raise you the best I can. And, I said all the right things. I said, but, you got to keep this on the real side for dad. I don't want to be a grandpa. I don't want none of this. You know what I mean? I tried to say to him, have fun, but don't do things. You know what I mean? So anyway,
Don't take it too far.
It's 3:00 in the morning. The young lady gets up to pee. She walks into the other room adjacent to it, and I heard this on the top floor, this scream. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, it wakes me up. I got to look in the mirror, run down the steps. What the fuck is going on? And she tells me the same thing. She saw a dark figure standing in the corner. Now, here's the whole deal. After that, every light in the basement had to be on the rest of the night. 7:00 in the morning, as soon as it got daybreak, her 2.5, 3 day stay was cut short, and she cut out of town. She was gone. She did not want to be in this house. So so you hear things like this and you experience things. And I took pictures around my property that are like unexplainable. All those really red, large orbs that had like faces in them. And if you blow them up, you can see weirdness, and like two glowing yellow eyes. What is this shit? Is it the dimension that they're breaking through a fabric that we can't see that only does show through camera lenses? We don't know, but it's one of those mystery things.
Maybe it's some kind of a probe.
Yes. I'm sorry, what was that, Dave?
Maybe it's some kind of a probe.
And something from the other side, technology we don't understand, possibly, because there was no noises. It was quiet as a mouse.
Well, in a way, think of it like a drone.
I know what you're suggesting, but again, the element of what had occurred was complete silence. So some type of artificial intelligence, AI, sure, possibly, from them, because it wasn't from here.
Yeah.
The thing could go like this in size. And in some cases, if you look at the pictures and really study them, there's numerous, and I know that sometimes the mind plays tricks and says, well, hey, here, you're looking at this, but yet there's something else here and something else there. How many things can you make of it? Just like looking in the cloud. You look up at a cloud and some people say, I saw Jesus. I looked up at a cloud and I saw a Khan's face. You know what I mean? Just different analogies of things, of natural occurrences that we see. Is it all part of a plan that we live in on this great earth, that we are to see things like that and we manifest them ourselves? Or is it part of more of a holographic type scenario where when you deep dive into that way, the imagination is more magical than one could ever believe. How does it all work? I don't know. But yet we all have some type of sighting. You can't take that off the plate. Something, somehow, some way, something always worked that's unexplained. It's mind blowing. Alyssa Lang's on. Hi, Alyssa. How are you? Electromagnetic. That would be impulse. Electromagnetic would be stimulation. I don't know, Nance. I know about physics. I bring a book over here and show it to you. But physics doesn't explain that. Now, if you go into quantum mathematics, then maybe you're breaking down an element. Then I'll sit with you and you can challenge my brain, and I'll take you on a road trip. But it's not going to be in general physics, not in any way. Nothing fits the narrative of the physics that we know, if that's what your suggestion. So I'll apologize to you in case you're saying it that way. But I want you guys to be a part. Let's get into something a little different. Kern County, California. Anybody know where Kern County, California is?
No. I haven't been to California since I was a little kid.
Well, that's where we're headed now. This is a story that was shared to me many years ago. There was two cops, and the one had his son with them. They were about 20 miles into a forest for hiking and camping. On the first night, they started out with unknown types of screams, and that's why I started out tonight's segment with the screams, the growls, the reverberation of the pressure, because this is what's in this story here. This may not be as Bigfoot as most may want to hear, but there is a key component to this. All right. So on the first night, it all started out with unknown screams. And of course, you know, like even me, you, I mean, we'd be looking around, even if we realized what they were. In this case, the two officers, which they were, you know, out to have a good time, thought they knew what mostly everything in this area sounded like because they were kind of from the area. You know, they drove an hour to get there and then went 20 miles back in, set up a camp, and these unknown screams. So it went on for about an hour. And at the end of the hour, they were both holding on to their handguns because they didn't understand it. And they said that the screams were so loud, like pressureful as well, that they could feel it within their own body.
Yeah.
Maybe these screams have a different characteristic too that we don't understand, that this infrasound that they may have capabilities to, that maybe the reason we feel it like that, it's that
there's some bass in it.
Well, I don't know. They didn't reflect it that way, but the possibility what you just said could be true. Yeah, because my kid puts in all those kind of stereos in these $1 million cars and stuff at his place. And they're always lined up with hockey people, football people, baseball people, and just some of the better-to-do families in the Pittsburgh surrounding areas. And believe me, I know what they sound like. And yeah, I get you. And that does travel, that can. But for me, it irritates my eardrums more than it does shake me up. You know, I like a good hard thunk, like when you have that beat. But some of that, it's like, that's not music no more. But nevertheless, but if it fits them, they use it, it's fine until they pass my house at night. And then I want to shoot their windows out in their cars. And you know, but it's just true. So anyway, they're going through all these screams for about an hour. But at the end of the hour, like I was saying, they were putting their hands on their guns. Like, what the hell is this? All right, so into the next day, they're still there. They're having a pretty good day. Comes the nightfall. It's always been quiet. They build a fire. The story goes on, though, a little bit different. Now they're starting here as they go into the evening with the fire started. They're hearing like branches breaking on trees. Things that would be unnatural. Very, very loud, intentional cracking of tree branches. Yeah. So again, hands on the guns. Now they're a little worried. Flashlights come on. As soon as they put back to each other with the sun holding on to them as they're going in a circle back to back with their flashlights, certain indications of certain spots that they hit, the sounds went completely away. So they know now that it's very close to them, whatever it is. And every time the flashlight hits a certain spot, certain position, the sound goes away. The next time the sound starts, they do the same thing again, back to back, holding up the flashlight with their gun out as they go. Now the sound moved to a new area, but the flashlight worked. The sound quit. Now they say to each other, this is just too unusual. I'm worried for the kid. Let's just go into the thicket a little bit and see what's going on. So they go into the thicket. They're going back. All of a sudden, they hear thrashing and crunching and breaking. And they're like, startled completely. Now, these are two grown men, police officers, in their mid-40s. Just out with the boy, trying to have a nice camp trip. They start to observe breakage in the trees in front of them. Fresh, clear breaks, fresh wood showing, like fresh meat off the tree. It's right there in color. And when it's fresh, the appearance of fresh versus old is highly detectable. You can visually see it. So they go through that. All the breakages were about 7 foot high. That was the clarity to that part. They're both moving forward. I believe that they're using a tactical method. Observing, looking behind them, moving forward, and in the far distant, but not real far, maybe 30 feet, they see a very huge, very black flash. Now, there was no concrete evidence in any way about it was clearly a Bigfoot. Now, they thought in the back of their mind, they talked about it the night before after the screams. These type of things came up, but they had no indication of what it was. So, all good. Bad night, worried for the kid, wrong place, wrong time. We better go back home. So they cut the trip a little short. They go back to work. They go into work. They're talking to their fellow police officers. Well, of course, everybody in the unit laughs at them. Like, yeah, right, sure, Bigfoot. You saw Bigfoot. Bigfoot was one. Yeah. Well, one of the officers in the back came up to them and said, what you said was really interesting about the vocalization and these screams. He says, I have a videotape that was sent to me from the Game Commission, classified to use only when important. He says, I listened to it once and I don't know what to think of it. I don't know what the take is. He says, but it was sounds of animals so we could identify them. Now, why we have it on our records and in our possession from the State Game Commission, coordinating this old cassette tape of these vocalizations of different animals, he says, let me play it for you and tell me what you think. So they agree to do it after their shift. They're going to get together and he's going to play the recording in one of the back offices. They go into the back office. And the first one, it doesn't, they're listening to different animals. No, that wasn't it. But when they got to the fifth one, they both looked at each other and it was like, bam, right on the money. So they looked at the chart. What is number 5? This come from the State Game Commission. Number 5, Bigfoot growl and howl, screams. Clarity. Why does some of our forestry and law enforcement have something like this and give it to some of the closer police stations around? I mean, I can assume that they know more than what they ever talk about. And that's why I brought this story up into play. When you think about it, you have a police station in possession of identification of sounds that have to do with unknown or animals so they can make better determinations when necessary. So number 5 was on the list, and the determination and both these officers' minds was exactly what they were hearing. And they played it repeatedly because they listened to it for nearly 1 hour. And, going through that horrific moment in time, here they are. And then, bam, there it is. And the definition equals this sound that you know, that you identify equals Bigfoot.
Yeah.
How would the state game commission know that? And who would provide that to the state game commission to pass out to some of the local law enforcement that were within a certain, now this was explained in part of the story, that only with like a certain radius of the forest would the police departments would get it. Was it because of complaints, people making complaints, they find it necessary? Who made this tape? Where did they get the vocalizations?
Yeah.
How did they determine? So it's pretty weird. How do you like that story?
That was pretty interesting. And a lot of the behavior I've heard, not that types of screams, but I have been growled at before. Now, one night I had taken a snack out for the females, and the way my barn is there's like, it's an old dairy barn, and it's got a lot of, it's made, with galvanized iron on the outside. So anyway, I got a couple of bays that face to the south, because you got a tall part in the middle, and then it's almost like a lean-to off of each side. Right. But the one kind of goes in an L shape and then kind of faces to the west, and then there's one of those sliding doors that with the wheels that go along a pipe, And in that bay, that door was open, and that's kind of right by where I usually put a snack out for them, because they have a trail that goes right along the north side of my barn where they go down to the pond to get a drink. And as I'm passing this doorway, I hear this growl. It sounds like a cross between something you'd expect from a bear and a really big dog. And the sound came from up by the ceiling. Now, if you ever had an oh shit moment, this was it. I'm here to tell you.
Yeah.
And, you're like, oh God, what do I do? You think fast. So what I did is I turned my back to it and acted like, I just pretty much ignored it. Because I think what happened was there was a Bigfoot in there, and he felt trapped because I was between him and his exit.
Right.
And by turning my back to him, it showed him, first off, that I trusted him not to hurt me. Second off, that I wasn't trying to trap him. And third, I really didn't care he was there. And, I mean, I've kind of done that before, where I just treat them like they belong. And, I put the snack out, and I did my usual thing, told them come and get it. And now I'll admit, I kind of walked past that opening again a little quicker than the first time. And along that side of the barn, I went a little faster than my normal pace. Right. Because it was all in the dark, and I didn't have a light. But everything worked out okay. He didn't do nothing. And I guess if he stepped out at that point, he probably got himself a nice snack, a gravy train dog food, a couple eggs, and some maple flavored bacon.
Well, I don't know any Bigfoot that probably wouldn't like that. I mean, if I was a Bigfoot, I'm sure I would. That was an interesting share there. And I think we talked about a little bit about that moment you had before, but many didn't hear it. So it's perfectly fine. Yeah, that's interesting. The biggest thing would be like keeping your back turned and trusting them. And that would, and I'll tell you why in a moment as I go deep diving on another narrative that you're going to find really interesting. In the meantime, Carl wanted to share something here, and Dave Lovin says hello to the Dark Radio Network Project. I know someone from Carl. I know someone who as a child have an imaginary friend that was mauled by a mountain lion and died. And as historical records proven, it happened not far from where their house. Only children see this apparition. Okay, so I guess he's explaining the apparition or the imaginary friend or the apparition. I don't know. I know someone whose child has an imaginary friend who was mauled by a mountain lion and died. Okay.
Yeah, so it's the ghost of the mauled child.
Yeah, wow. Yeah,
And
I
only
thought that's what
children
it was,
see
but it was a little hard, and I didn't know if that's what I wanted to read it twice in my head to comprehend the fact before I told somebody, we're dealing with a mull child here. But listen, I'm going right in the same path here. Next, I really am. Unless you got something you want to bring up, Dave, I'll continue with Bigfoot. If
Well,
you're
I
good with
wanted
that.
to bring one thing up about how you mentioned with the peripheral vision.
Yeah, sure.
I've had sightings like that before where they see you look in one direction and they'll move. Like
Okay.
when I've been out with I got the chainsaw in my hand and I'm getting ready to move to a different spot to cut another whatever, whether it's a tree that I got down or one I'm going to take down because it's dead.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them but run from behind one big tree to another and then lean back just enough so one eye can look at you out of my peripheral vision. And if you turn to look that way, there ain't nothing there, just a tree.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing that I find that happens to me, doorways. And I say that with clarity. This is not pre-planned. This is live. But that's where I see my things. It's like, first off, I live in a place they call Indian Rock, and I'm sure, needless to say, issues probably occurred here a couple hundred years ago, and I don't know if they're restless spirits. I don't know what they are, but I do know. Um, if I observe into another room from depending upon my position where I'm sitting, I could be, in the front room, which is I guess you could call the living room, and sitting there just narrating and running around through Facebook and writing notes and doing my dues that I do every day. It happens all the time. There's just not like, oh, this happens once a month. No, this is repetitive to me. I can look across, even though I'm not looking across, there's enough to say I saw something blur through. And it's very quick. Sometimes it's just like it flickers on and off. So some people say they always see things in a pattern, that has movement. Mine's don't. Mine don't do that. Mine can come in just like a picture. All of a sudden it's in this dimension and gone from it.
Yeah.
And I could blink my eye to look up that fast as a blink is. And if anybody needs to blink their eye right now, just to test how fast that is, imagine and that blink there and gone. And I don't know what it is. And I don't think my brain's mentally retarded by any means. If anybody follows me, listens to my grammar and my English, I'm getting old. I forget things. I get brain fog. Yeah, but I think I'm pretty still on the money. Going out to lunch, that I do know. I know changes in my life have occurred and are happening. But the point is, anybody could blink that quick would probably get the gist of there's no way it flashed through a doorway. It would have taken like one, two, maybe one and a half, but just to blink your eye that quick we're talking like, you know,
And there's some kind of motion that you're picking up on.
it, my perception, excuse me, of my peripheral vision is confirming to me I'm seeing something. And I don't think, in any way, I'm not nuts. I mean, something is happening, and I've been here for years. It doesn't bother me. I walk through the house in the dark, man. It doesn't bother me. There's also been some other things that I dealt through on a paranormal that way. I had a girlfriend that used to come to the house a lot and hang out, and she had a German Shepherd, and it always had on this real heavy choker. And there's been times now. Again, is this a residual effect in the atmosphere, like a self-recording? That it's said that it can happen. What comes around goes around. So anyway, there's been a couple times where I was sitting, and not just me there, and I would look to the person sitting there and say, "You heard that, right?" And they'd look at me and say, "Yeah, what the hell was that?" Sounded like a dog choker, and I was like, "Exactly what I thought," because we are instinctively smart. We recognize sounds If we're
Yeah.
by them, you learn them. Your mind records the definition of what they are, and you understand them in a moment's notice. Just boom, you know what they are. So that kind of thing happened to me as well. And I would just yell out, and I hope she's not listening because I know she loved this dog to death and she had to put him down. But he was a beautiful German Shepherd. I'll just say that. But, I yelled out his name just to see, like, because I knew no other dog that was ever here that was playful, running around with a choker on, you know what I mean? That would come and visit once in a while. And she knows I don't like dogs in my house, but she'd bring them anyway. But that was her way to torment me. And she did it on purpose. This was the kind of chick, okay? We'd pull up to a red light and she'd put down her windows, look at the police car right next and say, "Officer, he's not wearing his seatbelt." I mean, she would do anything to put you on the spot. Just do the stupidest shit. But that was who she was. But I remember that dog. I knew that sound, and I heard it. And also some other things, but I won't get into them. So just reflecting a couple little stories there. Hi, Andrea. How are you? Good to have you in tonight. Thank you for stopping through. So anyway, getting into this next one here. This is about Massachusetts. And missing persons that has been, oh man, not so much documented, but started by stories back in the 1700s in a swamp called Hockomock and the wetlands in Massachusetts. In 1909, records started to be kept, and the reason was a young lady went out in a canoe in 1909. She was part of a very wealthy family, a dignitary from the area, and 12 hours later, she never returned home. So, because of the father's stature, when he made a call, the whole community got involved. Everybody had a lot of respect for him, his strength, his family, his prestige, so on. Well, they found the canoe 7 miles away from where they thought she should be. And when they found her, she was just off the shoreline of this canal type thing in the wetland and with a broken neck, severed broken neck. Now, the interesting part about this, even though there's sadness here, is the Indians and the colonists, even back from the 1700s to the 1900s, had numerous missing women and children on both sides, not just the Indians, but the colonists, whatever you want to call them. That would be like the oldest indigenous people.
All the residents of the area, whether they were Native American or European.
Yeah. And it seemed to be a total thing of agreement from all sides, all indications, all the folklores, all the stories, etc. A lot of things that come up over the years because of the abundances that occurred, that it could possibly be a serial killer. Now, if it was a serial killer, how does that serial killer live 350 years?
Yeah.
Some of the issues that they found with bodies that were kind of like tore apart, many had broken necks. The body parts were always stacked in some way, like ceremonial. And they would find them that way. Now, the police won't even go into this area. There's where a guy that, you should know this guy, Don Gummo. You know about Don Gummo?
No.
Okay. Well, Don goes back for a long time. He does. He's been an advocate. He is very much involved in researching. One of the first people that him and a guy by the name, I'm just going to say, Mike, had their first sighting of a Bigfoot who had like algae all over his fur. Like if he was in a swamp, came up out of a swamp. The interesting part of their sighting was he had a deer over his shoulder carrying it. And we talked about this before. the possibility of could it be swamp algae or something that gives them that greenish kind of tint? So here's another part of the reflection of that story. Maybe the how I was talking about it a week or two ago with you, that it seemed a little odd, and they probably wouldn't take it and dress in it in any way and so forth. But maybe the possibility is that they do go into some of these really marshy areas where they have that green, scummy stuff all over the surface. And being that they have fur, it sticks to them.
Yeah.
So this was one of the first encounters that he had up there with his friend Mike. Nevertheless, within the area of the swamp, directly focusing on the swamp, they find several narratives of different species. So we have type 1, which is the brown-red, red-brown. You might want to call them cinnamon. It's described by him in his records and documentation as brown reds. Type 2, or black fur, with black skin. Now, the brown reds, it's described that they have more of ape-like features in their facial. The black fur, black skin, have more of the smashed nose and almost an African type appearance of what you might think, like some of those very big stones that were being dug up. Do you remember the big stones that
in South America, the giant heads where they had the African looking features on them?
Right. Same type of features as he described in the sightings. Now, there's been numerous sightings there this way. Then you have the grays. The grays are the only one that seem to stay in the swamp. And they have a white pigment skin and look Neanderthal and face. So you have type 1, type 2, type 3. Now, how they divided this was upon occurrences, because the police didn't like to go in to investigate for any type of scenarios of missing and searching. And anytime there would be a search, mysteriously, they were always called off for an emergency and said, we'll have to come back to it, which they never went back to it. And that's why Don would get into this and do what he did with Michael. So they were doing this, and they were cataloging and making records through the years. And they knew the area, they knew the sounds. But what they didn't realize were the actions. The black-colored Bigfoot were more like the gifted that you describe and how you get along with them. They respect you, you respect them.
Well, yeah, like the ones here, they're all of them are black, and they have gray skin. It's, like driftwood or tree bark color.
Right. Well, in this scenario, the grays with the whitish pigment style skin that stand the biggest that they've claimed that they had face-to-face encounters, that was up to 30 feet away, approximately 8 foot, 1,000 pounds, 800 to 1,000 pounds. This whole entirety, Neanderthal face, is where all the missing is. So they conclusively put together, through the field investigations and all the occurrences that have happened, they dialogued the gray silvers as being the danger species of this Bigfoot culture scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute and distance that you start getting out of this area and it turns to the cinnamon, the red browns, then you get into a different relationship, a different mannerism of animal. And then when you get to the black, again, type 3, it changes again. So you have type 1 gray, problem. Red and brown, neutral. 3, friendly. Black fur. I don't know how that narrative works for you, but these are people that spent more years than you're alive in the field.
Yeah.
And this was their determinations and what they come up with. The only conclusive thing is, because of all the missing people, that had occurred in this area was the only thing that was concrete enough, because in Massachusetts they know it's there. They pretty much kind of knew the geography, as well as the wildlife and more. What would break a human's neck? What would break a deer's back in half? And you could physically see that it happened. These are the type of reports, the things that they saw, came across, found, etc. And they did, within a span, I guess, of about 20 miles, found the three characteristics of the three traits of the three different species.
So it was like overlapping territories or something?
Yeah, exactly. So what do you know about the Greys? And I'm not talking about Martians.
Now, do you think that that's that name I can't think of, that they called the face eater, the Gudgeway or something like that?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. That goes under the weird cryptic, is what I call it. But
it's like the type of Bigfoot, but
they got the jaggedy teeth.
Right, and they'll kill you. They called it the face eater.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
That's what the Native American term for him was.
Well, there was no relevance on the teeth in any of the documentation that reflects to this.
But then again, you never know. Maybe they never saw the teeth. So
that's true. That's true. It's just it's not in writing.
Yeah.
It's not in writing. But again, we're not about just sharing somebody's encounter. I'm not about that. I want people to know that I want to bring them things that may create different facts. Like, why was this cassette recording made? Why was it considered classified to use only for proper identification in a police investigation? You know what I mean? Why would somebody have that? And then have what all the sounds meant, like 1 through 10, or whatever. When they came to 5, when it matched, it labeled it right on. The Bigfoot creature. So you have that. And then
for example, have you ever heard a deer distress call?
Yes, I know exactly what they sound like.
Now, if you hear that in the dark, that can be kind of freaky.
Yeah. I get it.
That sounds almost like the raptors off Jurassic Park.
I haven't listened to the raptors off Jurassic Park in a while. I'd have to go back to reflect, but I do know what they sound like, as well as even the babies when they're meh, 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 and they get into their high pitched frequency when they're in fear. It's a lower frequency, but it does sound like they're calling mom. And it's almost like a human verbalization. And then we do know that in some cases, I've talked to 4 people in my entirety of life. Gary was one of the most recent. You probably remember this with Gary, where he came on the show and said that there was a thank you kind of said behind him after doing an offering.
They left the hot dogs.
Yeah, after doing the offering. So you have narratives like that out there, but information is important in different ways when you're trying to do the best for the public and sharing information. But I thought, hitting it from that direction tonight might have been a little bit more interesting, because we're not being told everything here. And this is why our work, every individual's work, is so much more meaningful, because we will be the ones that will have to figure this out, that will figure it out. But, here you have people that have been around for a lot of years, that take their research, as honest and truly as they possibly can, make the notation. And they're not out there saying, I saw 100 Bigfoot. They're saying they had the rarity of occasion here, what they saw in this. And I guess they were trying to track the geography of the whole area. The most important fact was learning the fact that the only thing that added up and the deaths, that they all happened in the area where the Greys stayed to, and they did not come out of this area. They never saw them out of the area. Doesn't mean that they don't come out of it. They just were never seen by their eyes out of it. They were only, and I think they had 3 or 4 sightings in the area of the Mohawk Swamp, Hakamo Swamp, that was all Grey related. unequivocally gray, 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 gray. So then you have that. And then once you get out, the stories increased about the red browns. So they were matching stories, and they were looking, I guess, for tree stands where people found them. I mean, it gets into the detail that I'm not describing here. These guys were not fly by nights. They marked everything down except for that teeth component that you brought up. So they went to areas, they looked, they searched, they went and talked to people. They focused, and that's how they had their sightings, or close encounters of sightings of what you. In that one moment, you look, you turn your head back, and then all of a sudden you realize you turned too soon. Something darts away. It's on 2 feet. You know it's tall. You know it's massive, but you don't really get a great eye contact to it. So there's many.
Now, I see in the chat, Abe Sias is on. He says sounds like Dogman.
Well,
I wonder if that could be a possibility of the killer, because you hear a lot of the legends and whatnot about Dogman, that they're pretty aggressive.
And we can assume a lot of things here, but going off the data and what was studied and what they found, I can only share that. We can't take Dogman off for any accountability here. And we cannot say that one's not more hostile than the other when it comes to Bigfoot or Keller or their demeanor. The possibilities exist. All we have is the information. It's always worthwhile sharing. But yeah, could it be Dogman or some other cryptid that we're unfamiliar with? Of course. Would they survive living with Bigfoot? A colony of Bigfoot, which they feel really does exist in that area? You got to look it up. You'll find it quite intriguing. I don't know if I was a Dogman, if I would want to challenge up to 20 to 25 Bigfoot. I'm just saying. No. So we do have ways that we can look at it and try to understand it. And everybody here is right. The possibilities are endless, but we do have some facts and data here that are rather interesting, the same as the cassette tape. So I hope what I brought tonight created a good vibe for everybody, because the stories are great too. How about any stories in the A Life with Bigfoot? I did see something the other day that somebody shared. I was hoping you were going to bring it forth. Did you bring anything forth from some of the members down there?
Yeah, give me a second here.
I thought that one was a good story. I don't get to read them all because I'm working on this project. Otherwise, I'd be so nose deep into this, it'd be pathetic. But I think I'm bringing a different form of interest because I'm more of a speaker in ways of how it works. And I never doubt the subject of its real existence. I've seen enough to know that there are things out there doing things. Maybe it's Dogman in my case. Maybe it's Bigfoot. I don't know. But I don't think Dogman has the same footprint as Bigfoot. Not by far.
No, it's quite different.
And one of the issues also, I think just came to my mind. No joke. This just came to my mind. One of those cops were trying to figure out the breakage in the trees and that. They did notice that there were steps taken, but the slickness and wetness of the forest floor created only large skid marks.
Well, and that's a big problem, with, for example, like where I'm at, you've got hardwood forest. There's quite a bit of leaf litter on the ground.
Yeah, so the ground stays moist. They hit it. They're high. They're flying. They're running. Boom. I mean, yeah.
Well, they step on the leaves, and it's like a sponge. It comes back, over time. So unless you're seeing tracks that are extremely fresh, like when I had my very first sighting, I went back 2 days later to look for tracks, but the way the leaf litter was, any tracks were obliterated because, the leaf litter came back like a sponge.
Yeah.
And
Abe's saying that they are territorial. So that would keep different. Well, territorial to what, I should say to Abe, because what I described here from the data collected from Dawn was the fact that they stay separated by Keller almost. I don't know. And as far as what I was saying to do, I apologize to everybody. That was a mind slip on my part. Call it age, but it's a fact. I can actually produce the information for this story at any time too. So that is not even an issue. This is all documented information that went to field investigators as well afterwards. But yeah, so I even had a guy once describe to me. He was, I think it was in New Hampshire at the time. I was talking. This is back when AOL was the big thing. He said when they took off, this thing jumped out of a tree, and when it came down, it was breaking branches 4 to 5 inches thick. He says he don't think it
Jeez.
weighed more than 350 pounds, but when it took off in 3 steps, he thinks it was doing 35 miles an hour. It was in the snow, and he said it propelled the snow up like it was blowing snow like a snow blower in every step it took. It was just a whirlwind of snow as this beast took off. Now, this is a long, long time ago story on an AOL chat room. And back in the day, that was all we had. That was our first intake to the community, finding Bigfoot people and who talked about what. What is it? Maybe 20 years ago now since AOL?
Yeah, something like that, at least.
And he swears that within 3 steps, this thing was doing 35. And you know what? In a way, I could believe that because I came across some black bears on my quad when I was done at. I was heading into a part of the mining district up in Karn City, and there's a place called. Well, what it's called doesn't even matter. Maybe I should keep it quiet because that would really disrupt a lot of old people that live back here on a very desolate road. But nevertheless, I'll say it like this. I came across the bear going back to a hunt club that was owned by a mining company. And it's very well known up there. I'll just say that. And if you know about it, you'll know who they are. They know who you are, and they don't care if you're there. Just have respect. The point is, I watched a black bear come across the road who was basically just in a pace, just doing his thing, saw me with one head turn. And I swear to God, within like 5 seconds, he was down through the valley and up on the other side of the hill looking at me. That, boom. So an animal can go into that kind of warp speed more fast than you can imagine. And that was one of the fastest bears I ever saw in my life, to be quite honest with you. It was like turbo fast. So I saw him, and in one split second, I don't think 3 to 5 seconds passed, and he was like, boom, all the way over there. And I said to myself, Jesus Christ, he could catch me on this if he wanted to. Now, I got a 650 twin double deck seater. So it's actually a TRV, a 2-rider vehicle, all-terrain vehicle, legally for plates. And this thing's monster quick, monster heavy, and on a fly, it will rip ass. Well, they all do, though. But the bottom line is this. I really think if one was like trying to neck and neck me, that would have been the animal. He could have done it.
Yeah.
So I would have to say somebody describing a Bigfoot running 35 miles an hour, the possibility's endless there. I could believe that that's true.
Well, I heard Richard had told me that he had talked with a guy who was, another law enforcement officer who had responded to reports of a peeping Tom, and it turned out to be a Bigfoot. And he's in his car, he's got the cherries going, and this thing's running down the side of the road, and with his radar, he clocked it at over 50 miles an hour. And then it just went in the woods, and that was the end of that. And that one was approximately 9 feet tall. So, I'm sure being juiced up on adrenaline had a lot to do with the speed, but can you imagine a full-grown one, a 12-footer, with the stride they got, juiced up on adrenaline, how fast they could go?
Well, how about this? Abe says the dogman I witnessed were 11 to 13 foot tall, very massive, very muscular, walking on twos.
That's pretty big.
That's incredibly big. I don't know that I never knew they existed that big. I mean, the reports I ever saw was like 8 to 8.5 feet tall.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying that. Maybe it's a different type of cryptid that we were unaware of. That's
but
why.
most of what you hear as far as dogmen, I don't think most of what people are seeing aren't more than about 8 feet tall.
Right. And the occasional Bigfoot where you might get into a 9 to 10 foot. Very seldom do we get over. I'm not saying they don't exist out there. Um, but the bottom line is that's very, 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 very large. And he furthermore makes another comment. I don't know if you're looking, Dave. He says, yes, one broke a massive oak tree limb behind me as I was sitting on the picnic table. As the limb landed heavily on the ground, the reddish brownish, which I believe to be the female, laid 6 feet away or landed 6 feet away. We made eye contact and it ran into the creek. I know if I was 13 feet tall, even if I was a chick, reddish brown fur, and you're sitting at a picnic table, I wouldn't have ran from you. you know, I'm just saying, no, I have no clue. I mean, we really don't. And I'm not trying to be ignorant to you. All respect to you, brother. Um, it's, but 13, that's really huge. I mean, uh, you know, how do they even hide? This is that narrative of how well cloaking, how well they can cloak and blend in and stay still, and you
Well,
know,
yeah, that just remaining motionless is one of their biggest assets
right.
because what we notice more often than not is the motion. When you see something moving, that's where it draws your attention. And if it's not moving and there's a little bit of brush in between to break it up, you don't notice it.
So Carl knows a little bit about the area I was talking about. Um, I didn't know you knew that, Carl, but that's good. So a lot of Bigfoot sightings from Karn City, Boyers, and all the way to Zillion Opal over a lot of the years. One restaurant on 19 has a Sasquatch burger because the owner many years ago seen one. I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Um, Maybe, in fact, some people up there in Carter City get things from a certain wood shop guy who makes stuff that's hidden next to trees and all the lawns, and that's becoming a problem. I mean, we create these 8 foot plywood silhouettes, and then people take them and they put them next, and people go by, and it's like, oh my god, I saw a Bigfoot, and here it is, it's a silhouette, and
Yeah, it's just one of them cutouts.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's how I start when I do a log mold chainsaw carving. I start kind of like with a silhouette pattern and do the side profile first to get the anatomy right. And then I go into the anatomy because honestly, making bears and Bigfoots and all that, they're not all that difficult at all. But it's a profile side element. When you do it from the side, you're going to do better than when you stand from the front. Once you get it groomed a certain way, you get an eye for it. And then it's just repetitious. But I haven't done any in like a year and a half just because of the ordeal that we're all in. But not only that, I was dealing with, job, family, running around, kids getting married, different stuff pulled me away at different times. And every time I went up, it was always I had something to do. I had to take care of this. I had to take care of that. And as soon as I go up this spring, I got to put a roof on the garage. So, I'm like, it's always never ending. And that's why I don't want this stuff no more. And I just want to get rid of it. All right. So anyway, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the find up in the Antarctic too of the ship that I mentioned to you, Dave, and we were talking about that a little bit at the beginning. I think we did, or we were talking in the green room. This is why I don't like to talk in
That
the
old
green room.
sailing ship.
It's called the Endurance. Yeah, from 100 years ago. They were, going to the Antarctic. They were a crew of really, strong men. They got trapped in the ice. And then finally the ice overtook the ship. They had to leave ship, take anything that they could take with them. Some of them did make it to safety, by the way, even from all the way up there. They walked and walked and walked, but it was fun. And I do believe they were using some type of Google Earth satellite. So once it was found, then one of the polar ships that they call polar exploratory ships or something like that went up. They had the GPS coordinates. They sent down a camera submarine. You could still see the wheel in the ship. I mean, it looks pretty good.
Was the hull crushed from the ice?
I can't confirm that. I can't confirm that. I didn't get to look at it all. I just thought it was interesting enough to bring up the people to tell them that I think it's in Facebook news. And if you want to look at something interesting, and more so, it might already be on America Disclosing Uncensored. That's where we put all this unknown. That's where we put Bigfoot tales and stories and UFOs and just things
I've
that,
got kind of a long Bigfoot one, but it's pretty good if you want. I'm going to skip parts of it because it's really long, but it's a pretty good encounter. If you're ready, I'll go for it.
Who, me? It's not about me, brother. You're the voice.
Okay. Basically, there's 4 people that went to go camping in Georgia. And they went there with a few vehicles, and they ended up having issues with batteries on everything. Were dead, a lot of them. And now it says, off in the distance, we heard an owl. Then nothing. After a few minutes, what is that light? She was pointing to the top of the tree line, but I could not see the light. And they seen it and asked the same question. And that's when she said it looked like an orb. It was weaving through the tops of the trees along the tree line and made the 90 degrees turn to its right to continue following the tree beside us. It floated to the road and then dropped lower. When it reached the road, once across the road, I was able to see it. What I saw was a white light about the size of a golf ball. It slowly floated away until it disappeared. I tried very hard to record it with my phone, but because I couldn't see it in the beginning, I wasn't able to. And once I did see it, it was too far away to capture with a cell phone. I do have an audio of the event as it happened, and you can clearly understand what's going on and what we were seeing during that 2-minute video. Mm-hmm. It was at this point that one of the people said, well, now we know they're here. I think my heart sank a little when he said that. Things settled down again, and somehow we still talked this one gal into staying because she was ready to bug out. She was really facing her fears that night, and I was terrified she was going to leave and reduce our numbers. One of the guys kept telling her she was going to be okay, and they just like to mess with people. He explained they were watching and curious. The woman will tell you that now, that every time he would tell her that, she would hear a voice laughing in her head saying, "Are you sure about that?" A few times she did tell us she felt like she was losing her mind, but we just assumed she was just scared, and all her senses were reacting. They called the next day and explained the voices she told him she was hearing, and we all agree that it's a strong possibility she may have been experiencing what many describe as mind speak. She eventually told us that she felt like they were feeding off her fear. She's a very inexperienced in this topic. She had never even heard of an orb before. For her to be experiencing things and seeing things often reported by others is just further confirmation that what she was experiencing was real. It wasn't long after the orb faded off that things settled down a bit. And I heard, "Oh, I got you now." I looked, and he had his night scope pointed in the direction the orb went. He then told us he was looking at one peeking around a tree. He could see both hands on the tree, both knees, and the head peeking. He took several pictures and then switched to record. Once he started recording, he could see the creature was still squatted down behind the tree, but had changed positions. He recorded for a few minutes and then lost sight of it. Things settled down again, but only for a short while. He said he heard something cross the dirt road and began having a strong feeling of being watched. He shivered as if hairs were standing on end, and said, I don't just feel like I'm being watched. I know I am. She heard some things across the road moving around. We heard a strange bird sound, but then debunked as a really loud cricket close by. The forest was never dead silent like frequently reported. The sound still seemed normal except for that one really loud cricket. Then she jumped up and said she heard something scratch in the back of her tent, and that it was for her and that she was getting a motel room. Well, of course, we tried to calm her down, but there was no chance. Once she heard something scratch at the back of the tent, he decided to go with her, and they would come back the next morning to break down the tent and get her belongings. It was then I heard 2 growls behind me. I looked over at him, and he said to me, "That was 2 growls." That was it for me, too. I told him to wait on me because I was also leaving. I had no idea where I was going, but I was not staying there. They decided the growls were just too close for comfort, and they all decided to turn on our lights, pull the vehicles around with the headlights on, and make sure we were all packed up so no one would have to come back the next day. Thank God I brought about 5 gallons of water and was able to extinguish the fire. When the couple went to break down their tent, they discovered that 3 of the straps on the backside that held their fly down had been unhooked. And she specifically remembers that after the tent was set up, she purposely hooked the straps correctly, so there was no reason all 3 straps should become unhooked. We were all just getting everything in our vehicles as fast as possible and trying to not leave any trash. I had everything loaded in my truck. I had thrown a lot of stuff in the back seat and made sure my electronics were all on the front seat. My scope was still in the same spot charging. My phone, flashlight, and purse were all in the front seat and accounted for, and that's when I saw it. A large reflecting white ball peeking through the V of a tree. I had looked at the reflective sign that was close by many times that night, but it kept reminding me of a window in the woods. But it was just a sign on one of the trees at the edge of the camping area. This was the first time I had seen 2 reflections, and one was a giant ball in a tree. I have a flashlight that's more of a spotlight. Okay. They all kid me about, so I reached in the front seat and grabbed it and walked parallel to the tree so I could see down in the woods and make sure it wasn't seeing something down in the woods that would be reflecting. And it wasn't. I could see clearly all down behind the tree and could find no explanation for the reflection. He was close by, so I called him over and asked him if he could explain the basketball-sized reflection if it was possibly eye shine. He said he didn't know and volunteered to walk closer. It was about 40 yards away, and he was shining his flashlight as well. When he was about 20 yards out, he stopped, started backing up, and then turned and hustled to his truck, saying, "We need to get out of here now." As he was approaching the reflection, it blinked and dropped from about 8 feet to about 5 feet in the V of the tree. The creature had walked out of the tree line and was behind the first tree wide enough to hide behind, just inside the camping area. All 3 vehicles sped out of there, and we all met up for a cup of coffee to gather ourselves. The couple decided to get a motel room for the night. I drove 2.5 hours home, and my friend drove 5.5 hours home. He's a Marine, a seasoned police officer, firearms instructor, an experienced BFRO investigator. And whatever that was we encountered made him drive all the way home that night. It wasn't until the next day that I learned he had found a whole tent with an air mattress still inside of it pulled into the woods. When we first arrived, as he was scouting the area, it seemed that someone before us may have decided to leave in a hurry too. I'm glad I didn't know about the tent in the woods before all of this started, or I may have went to get a motel room the minute things got weird. What happens next? Question. We are going back, but next time with more team members and one non-believer. I left the people's names out just because.
That's fine. That was kind of interesting. Like to see what happens on their next trip, though.
Yeah. Obviously, they got some action that kind of freaked them out, with the growls and finding that camping gear there from somebody else.
Yeah, but I like to look at the video, you know?
Well, and a lot of their equipment, the batteries were all dead. That's why she had her night vision scope
Right.
in the truck charging. I mean, that's a strange phenomenon. I'm going to bed. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
But I had seen that in another group, and I had asked her to post it in my group.
Okay.
Because I thought it was a very good story.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, to say the least.
At least they got out of there and no harm done.
Yeah, you never want to see anybody have any issues. That's for damn sure. That's for damn sure. All right, so I'm gonna move along this way. We didn't get any real comments from that. But there is one from Abe. At night, I call them spiritual dark shadow blurs. They move so fast, they travel in packs. Where there's one, there's more. I've moved from the location I had my encounter at. They would come and hit I got to hit Seymour. They would come and hit my mobile home at night and run to the top of my roof, run on top of my roof. If you're referring to Bigfoots, Abe, and I'm not trying to be ridiculous here, maybe juveniles, very small juveniles, because we all know how well some mobile home roofs are. But now they're making them better too. So they're making double wides, and they're actually putting substantial strength, reinforcements and stuff in. But if it was one of the older ones, one of the old metal dome roofs, I mean, God, I could imagine what that would have sounded like. I'd have been in my house screaming or something. But that's interesting, Abe. Thank you for that. And
he said he's referring to Dogman.
Oh, Dogman, whatever. But I mean, to imagine them running on the roof, I mean, around on it, that's just
they're still pretty heavy. Now I have heard reports from other people of juvenile Bigfoots getting up on roofs before.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I could imagine that they have that type of ability, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
And the field of vision would make that a desirable spot to go, just to see everything around the area.
Right. So these are some things. It's a little bit different, and my some of my final monologue stuff here that I had written on. I didn't quite finish it the way I wanted to, but again, work does come between things. But I think all in all, great show, great comments and stories and thoughts and theories. But this has to do with UFOs. And my thought behind some of it, because I get asked this from some people, I have in the past, and I haven't been doing a lot of the UFO as much as I used to. And that's because everybody's doing the same thing over and over. So I'll take this approach, and I'll say if crash retrievals and archaeological finds are true, then all bets are totally off. Everything lines up like that. Alien reproduction copies. Why so much of 47 is held back? That could be the narrative. Is this why ANI is being so much disclosed in this new 2022? And it's a fact. We are in a new sophisticated intelligence of science. And I do believe what we know and what the information has come into light is the crafts have a sense of intelligence on their own and work in conjunction with their controller. This may hold the key of who operates these, But who are they? Are they demons, aliens, fallen angels, or us? Or all of the above? I believe we had disclosure in my mind. I will continue to do the best I can to provide more information in the next couple following shows. If you see a little bit more of a reflection and do the ufology end, it's because I'm being asked to do it. And I'm more than happy to help out on that because there's some very interesting stories that are worldwide phenomena and occurrences from everywhere. Hello, Gary just popped into the room. Gary, why are you always coming in when the show's closing out? That's fine, brother. I love you no matter what, dude. I really do, man. Gary's a great guy. He sends me a lot of very interesting stuff. He totally does. And I don't know, Bill came on tonight. His wife has been sick. I sent prayers. I did everything you can do. I hope she's doing well. Have you heard anything from Bill Rigby out of Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project?
I seen him post that she was doing well.
Yeah, I'm just not real sure. I hope all's well. I know he was doing some other type of post on his page that had some reflections to some other things, so to speak. Bill comes on. He's very vocal on how he wants that group to be. So, he's a man with his plan, and I respect him. I know one thing. I'm not going to cross his path the wrong way. I don't want booted out of the group. But no, he's been busy with his wife, and I understand he's busy around the house. He's doing other things. He's changing his plans, and those things happen. There was something else, though, that you talked about for a minute before we go off air that was UFO related. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, though.
The mysterious orbs they found all over.
Yeah.
And there was a photograph of like a UFO and then some kind of an orb falling from it, almost like, dropping a bomb or something. And there were these metal orbs, and they're found all over the world. And with, it's a mystery as to what their origin or purpose is.
Yeah, that is a mystery. Unless somehow it's a phenomena of, like, even what I saw that happened to me the one time with my daughter in 2011. I think it was in July or August of 2011. I thought I was seeing, first off, there was nobody even close enough to buy anything that had the capability to get to where I was. They'd have had to be on my said property in my view in order for, what I saw to say, okay, I get what this is. There was nobody around. And I observed, I looked, I didn't panic. I did panic once, but not that time. And my daughter said to me, Dad, and what the hell was that? And I was like, I don't know, baby. I don't know, because I didn't know. But I learned from some MUFON information, even more information. I thought I knew a lot, but it's called a disbursement of energy. And when the propulsion system is engaged, like I guess you could say by the demand of the function is hard, like you need quick speed, it can give off these colors of fragments. And it looked to me like a mystical firework coming down to this prettiest green color. I'll never forget it, because honestly, it was like watching a beautiful firework just draping down sparkles very gently. And I thought to myself, I'm nuts. And she's saying to me what she's saying to me. And I'm like, you just swore. And, wasn't really swearing. And what the hell was that? She was scared. You go out there, you look up, you're not thinking. This was right in the tree line. I mean, within the leaves of the tree line. So it was like right in front of us in the open part of the trees, not in the forest part. It was on our side, right in front of us, maybe 50 feet tops in front of our faces, looking up on an angle into the treetops where it came from. And it was just bizarre. It was just bizarre. I know who all my neighbors are. It wasn't them. They weren't even close to me. But yet it was there. And then here I come across the same thing in Pennsylvania. Another person, same sighting, her story on MUFON. I keep my own documentation to stuff over the years. I don't really try to get into MUFON. I'm not against them, but I don't think they're full, particularly for the full public. When the founder was of MUFON was more involved in the narrative of the topic, I was more interested in the organization, but not so much as I am now.
Is that Bill Burns?
Is that what his name? Real tall, thin guy.
Oh, I thought this was an older guy with glasses.
No, that's not. I don't think that's his name. His name's not in my head in this particular moment, but nevertheless, I mean, they're operating different. They truly are. They want to take your information. They want you on their side in case they ever need you. That seems to be like a new direction of how MUFON works. And I'm not saying it's all like that, but there's been some mass reportings of a lot of things. And it's just remarkable because it puts us into these places. And you can't take the facts that the Pentagon released and our own military released evidence of stuff. That's why I say disclosures already happened. You know, they already said they don't know what these things are. Even Obama said we don't know what these things are. We need to figure it out. Well, maybe we do know. Maybe we do know exactly what they are. And maybe that's what this whole crash retrieval and reverse engineering has been about. Maybe we are in check. And we do have these systems that they can operate. And there was a story that I don't know if was true. We talked about this in the green room before going on. That something in Russia where UFO came down. Now, this just might be some of that very secretive people that Stephen Greer talks about, who have been doing this for 60, 70 years of reverse engineering and creations and more of these particular types of crafts. And when you look where the Nazis are and Germany and who was involved in the early parts of different perspectives of time machines and flying saucers, it fits the narrative. But they were shooting out, blowing up Russian tanks. I don't know if this is a true narrative or true story, but this is out there in some form of information. So if you find it, look at it. And if anybody can send it to me, because I'll be working through the rest of the weekend. But yeah.
I read something on it. They were praying, and then this UFO came and lightning came out of it and destroyed at least one tank.
Right. Sounds like the same thing that happened to George Floyd's mural.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that where lightning came down and blasted.
And there wasn't even a storm. So imagine that. I don't know. At least not that day. But again, the narratives in today's world, today's news, current news, citizen journalism, it's all over the place. You got to really read deep. I mean, there's a lot of things. Right now, we're even being told as far much information as there has been plagues and viruses found in some of these biolabs that now that Russia's taken over. And he's directing his questions all to the United States military. And I'm sure it's going to be a big, what the hell do you think you people are doing? And why shouldn't another leader of another country, if this isn't truly found, why isn't it brought into light? We know in Pennsylvania, smallpox vials were found in a freezer just maybe 6 months ago. It made news. So there's something going on here. And all I can say is to the people, the public of the United States, be ever so careful. David, I got to get to bed. I'm tired. We got on around 8:30. It's 10:20. I want to thank everybody who tuned in, but Michael has to crash and burn to get back up tomorrow and do what he needs to. Thank you for another really great episode. We'll be back next Wednesday. We'll talk more. we'll fit a little more UFO into it, ufology. I'll look and search for some more things that I think will find interest in your minds, and we'll create and navigate through this whole Bigfoot, UFO, the unknown, and more, and sometimes on Sundays. David, thank you so much, brother. I am pistol whip tired. I'm not joking.
Oh,
I'm tireder than a dog, a two-tailed dog.
Yeah, you look tired when we started, and that hasn't improved.
You know, I'm not embarrassed of who I am. I work hard. I work hard for America. I do. I work hard for them. I work hard for myself. I hope I've proven myself to people. And if I didn't, that's okay. Maybe it'll make a difference to someone in the future that looks back and says, wow, this kid was really on the money on so much shit. You know, that'll be all the difference. I'll never know about it. But again, maybe someday it'll matter. Well, thanks, David. I appreciate you, and I appreciate everyone out there in Bigfoot land and more. And Marion, good night to you. I know you checked
the hay already. Yeah.
Yeah. So good night to her. And Mary and all her products, please check her out also on the Bigfoot Project Network. You can get everything from baby size to squat size. So if you're really big, guys, squat size. Imagine that. Maybe you can cuddle in it. Who knows? Check out the stuff on that site. Everyone, take care. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.